into it. Right, it's 7:36. We've got part 3, and a couple of you this week have asked me, what about the map? Well, what I wanted you to do was to order a map, which is going to be one of these things, which is a 1 to 25,000 scale map anywhere in the country. This is Orkney, Westray, Papa Westray, Rousey, Egglesay, and Wyre. And what we're looking for, the scale of this map, other than looking at the sea, is something like that. Okay, we will look at an image of what these maps look like. So what I'm hoping is that you've managed to get hold of a copy of one of these maps. You could have got it £3 or £4 off the internet anywhere in Britain. It doesn't really matter, but it's got to be 1 to 25,000 scale. It's usually orange. If it's pink, you've got the wrong scale. Good, excellent, we're working. But okay, stop showing off. So what we're going to do with these maps? What we're going to mention about these maps and the exercise for next week will come right at the end. And I've got 2 little slides I want to share with you. So I would like to ask, Menna, have you been out doing a bit of the old field walk and getting depressed picking up bits from the field?
No, unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to do it.
And Jessica?
Yeah?
Have you ever done field?
No, I haven't.
Except standing in a field pretending to be some wheat. And the last person to ask would be Bill. Have you done any field walking?
Every Sunday, Carl, when I go with the Ramblers.
But that's rambling.
Because they're racing ahead and I'm looking down for little things, bits and pieces, especially in the Vale. And guess what? Not a bleeding thing. But I still do it.
Bill, have you ever had that experience where I'm wandering across a field and I've said, over there, 2 meters away, there's a bit of Roman pottery?
Yes, and that bloody annoys me. It really does, especially if I've been there. But yes, I'm aware of the ground, even though I haven't found anything yet.
So what I'm going to do today, we're going to look at methods of collecting quantification in field walking. Well, we'll get rid of the quantification bit, or are we? And we'll just do a nice bit of naked field walking. I've got a nice little chart here, the types of things you need to do, but the file for field walking was rather thick. And what I've decided to do, the best way to teach is to do it from experience. So here we go. And it would be very good to have everyone dangling a pen and a bit of paper. So pen, paper, that's what you need. Good. Notes, that's what we want. So if anyone, good. Now, I've said to everybody that we are going to, Archaeology Company is going to be doing everything online. We might actually do sessions where I've got a little group of people picking up artifacts from a field, and we'll live stream that to people who want to see what we're doing in the field. So I might need 1 or 2 of you to come out field walking. It's very difficult to go field walking by yourself. One, it looks very strange as a man wandering across a field, looking down, picking up bits of pottery. But when it's organized, you need a group of people. So let's start looking at these images. So, Jessica, what are we seeing on the screen?
It says field walking with some people on a field.
Excellent. That's what we need, field walking. There's lots of terms that archaeologists use. They use field survey, field walking, field collection, loads of different things. Now, one thing that Time Team used to do really good was field walking. And Athelney was the first Time Team episode, I do believe, in 1994. And when they were out walking at Athelney, they actually found some iron slag from around the period that Athelney was occupied by the great King Alfred, right? That's where he was gathering his forces together to smash the Vikings, and they actually found evidence there, so it was great. They found that via field walking in a very muddy field. Field walking can be very entertaining, particularly when you've got children with you. And an adult says, I found a bit of slag, and then I've got my daughter saying, slag, and I've got my son saying, slag. Anyway, you need to make field walking entertaining because it can be very, very boring if you don't make it entertaining. Wandering across the field looking for artifacts is not necessarily the type of thing that people want to do on a Sunday, but I find it absolutely fascinating because if you do field walking right, you can come up with some really nice artifacts. If you do field walking wrong, it's absolutely pointless. Now, I've done both levels of field walking, and field walking needs to be done with something in mind up here. There's a reason why you're going out field walking, not wandering across a field like Bill aimlessly, losing everybody out of sight. But an example of really badly organized field walking that led to brilliant results was me at Colchester last year, when I said there's a field over there, it's been ploughed, let's find some artifacts. And I've told you this story that we found some nice bits of Samian ware, Colchester Samian ware, a nice clay pipe, a bit of clay pipe statuary, and a Roman coin, to name another load of artifacts. And all I put on the bags was this was in the field found next door to the place where there was the temple in Colchester. So that's okay, but you know, it's not done scientifically. So this is done scientifically. Lots of images to look at. So there's a group. Now they're very close together. Now that's rather interesting. Behind me, there's a guy. If you look, the view of this guy behind me is actually having a meter to be able to see one side and a meter to be able to see the other side. And then you've got another person alongside you. So in other words, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and they can cover 10 meters. So you've got to cover 2 meters each. 2 times 5 is 10. That's a 10 meter wide box in the field. So that's where we get technical, 10 meters in the field. And that's all gridded out. It's all sorted. Now, just to be honest with you, I probably need to get my skates on because I want to try and get a lot out of today. So they're covering a stretch of 10 meters. And then they do another 10 meters and another 10 meters and another 10 meters, right? So in other words, it's 100% coverage in a field. But that's probably not the best way of doing things because you need a sample of what's in the field. But these people look really enthusiastic and so on. Now, one other thing about this image, well, there's actually lots of things about this image, but we just don't have time. They are carrying these things, flags, okay? And the reason why they're carrying these is that when they find an artifact on the ground, a flag goes in there and indicates that there's an artifact there. Now, this tells me one thing very clearly. They have been told to only mark where there's flint, or they're wanting to just find Roman Samian ware in a field, right? And do you know what the hardest thing in field walking is? To leave everything else there. So you're being told not to pick up medieval pottery, and there's loads of it. But the aim is to try and find the indications of a Roman site. So finding medieval pottery is not going to help you find a Roman site. So you leave it there. It's the hardest thing in the world. But then again, if there's a Roman coin lying there and you're looking for a medieval site, or and so on, and it's an important artifact, then you put a flag in there as well. So there you go. And mind you, if you've got a Roman coin and you put a flag there, you need to put the coin in a bag to make sure that you know that there's a coin there, because that coin can be easily lost. So let's look a little bit about the text that I got in front of me. So let's just do that. My God, that looks very organized, maybe. So this looks really higgledy-piggledy. And what they've probably been told is just wander across the field. Wherever you see an artifact, put a flag in there, right? That's what that looks like to me, but there's different ways, different techniques, different whatever. The thing is, right, the big thing is, if I took you all out field walking, and most of you have got no experience about field walking, and I said, right, only collect Roman pottery. The first question I would have off all of you, what does Roman pottery look like? So with you guys, I would say put everything in your bags, except when you do that, I even get mud in the bags. But you've got to learn somewhere. And one of the reasons why you're doing this is to try and get a little bit of a foot forward if you ever do field walking. So that's good. Margaret's already got a foot forward because she's been washing my bits at Trellick.
Pardon?
Well, it's between me and Margaret, thank you very much. And she's been washing Menna's bits as well. So in this section, we shall look in more detail at some of the decisions confronting anyone who organises a field survey. Anyone can organise a field survey, but you don't go into a field without the farmer's permission. That's the first thing you need. Wonderful. But you also need to go through this checklist. You need to know where the local sites are. You need to know a little bit about the soil and geology and land use and all these other things. It's not just a matter of going into a field, finding bits. So we have to recognize and seek to understand the constraints inherent in our data as a result of decisions taken in devising our collection strategies. So what do we mean by that? Your data is derived from what you find. And that being so, it's good that you've got a group of people in the field who know what they're looking at. So if I'm saying to you guys, let's just pick up flint, all of you need to be able to identify flint. It's no point having one of you in the group who doesn't know what flint looks like, and every time you pass a bit of flint, you can't see it, right? You've all got to be the same skill base. And this is sometimes why field walking is not an easy thing to do, because I'm not going to miss anything, okay? And I will say it. I've been in archaeology so long, I will not miss anything. But the problem is with me is that I'm very curious about looking at everything. I like clay pipe. Menna loves clay pipe as well. So she would want to collect that clay pipe. Well, I've told her not to collect the clay pipe. So what I'm trying to say, you've got to be disciplined. Let's cut the bravado. Let's be disciplined. There is no easy way for strategies to be devised and a consensus to standardization of how to do field walking. It's a bit like a good cookbook. When you look at a cookbook, it sometimes says 3 spoonfuls of flour, 1 of honey, blah, blah, blah. But you're thinking, this isn't going to work in my oven. So you slightly change it. So like all chefs looking at a cookbook, they might devise their own strategies, their own recipe from a basic set of rules in the cookbook. But there are certain minimum standards of hygiene that all reputable cooks should observe. There's a certain level of archaeological practice that all archaeologists need to practice, you know? So say, for example, there's a medieval bit of pottery over there, 4 meters away, right? You don't go all the way over 4 meters and then put it back into the area that you're field walking. That's just not the way you do things. You don't do that. Because if you do that, field walking becomes pointless. The equivalent standards in archaeological survey relate primarily to organization, methodology, finds processing, data handling, analysis, reporting, what all these mean. Okay, methodology, we're just going to pick up flint. Fine. Finds processing, well, Margaret, I need you to wash all these artifacts by tomorrow. Good. Data handling. How do we enter this? Do we enter this on sheets? Do we put this onto computers? How do we do it? Who analyzes this? Does an expert looking at flint analyze this? Do we draw these things up? How do we report it? Do we actually put it on the internet? So it's grey material. Do we put it into the publications as academic material? What do we do? Or do we just talk amongst ourselves and say, wow, look what I found. I found a bit of Roman Samian ware. And we'll leave it there. That's no good, because to the bigger picture in archaeology, other people need to know. So the problem is with not being organized mean that the field walking is really pointless, right? You also need to have all these different understandings of what's around, the history, the soil. And one thing you need, this is going to sound bloody obvious, right? But don't go field walking in a field that's got grass completely all over it, right? It's 90% covered in grass, because the artifacts that you're looking for are going to be under that grass. So it's pointless. Yeah. And there's other things to think about, right? The crop in the field. We'll do a few things that I wasn't going to do, but I've just realized this is important. When you've got a crop in the field, you're going to damage the crop. So what you need to do is wait for the farmer to have harvested the crop. So what you're left with is stalks. So you're looking in amongst the stalks. Okay, fair enough. Or do you wait for the field to be harrowed? Basically, harrowing is they plow the field, more artifacts come to the surface, great. They harrow it. And then you've got all the freshly revealed artifacts. They're abraded, usually. What abraded means they've been slightly damaged by the plow, tossed around with, and so on and so on. Right, okay, good. So it's a plowed field. We've established that. There's lots of other rules, right? But we'll chuck a few in here. It's probably best not to go field walking when the ground is frozen, because the artifacts are going to be stuck to the mud. And as you're prizing them up, you're going to damage the artifacts and whatever, right? If you go field walking after a light flutter of snow, but it's not frozen soil, and it snowed about 10 o'clock in the morning, you wait till 12, that's sometimes a good time, because what happens, the sun comes up and it heats the ground, and the first things that are heated up are surfaces. Now, soil is technically not a surface, it's granules. So a surface is your pottery, or your coin, or your clay pipe, or your glass. They're going to be heated up and they're going to be picked up quite quickly, just like that. But then again, the light snow cover might restrict other things. But you write down, you went field walking in snow and everybody had the right skills, and it was the same methodology. So that could work. But you do field walking in another field to try and compare notes with the same conditions, i.e., it was snowing at 10 o'clock and we field walked at 12, right? Because if you don't do the same rules, the data is going to be skewed. You've got to have the same methodologies over fields. This is really, really important. So when you look at, say, for example, Mediterranean farmed landscapes, tropical rainforests, deserts, North European uplands, all the data is going to be very different because of the different conditions. It's very difficult field walking in Spain or Cyprus because everything's dry. The pottery looks very much like the soil. If it's really hot, your morale's a bit low and the sun's streaming on you, and so on and so on and so on. But if somebody turns around and said to you, only pick up the red bits of pottery, right? It makes things a little bit easier. So you know exactly what you're doing. So it's basically referred to as a research agenda. You've got an agenda to research, and you've got proper archaeological, practical plans, and that practical experience needs to be the same across the group. So the best way for me to do field walking with you guys, not to sound patronizing, but if none of you have ever done field walking before, you're all at the same skill level. And the worst person to be picking up artifacts in a field is going to be me. So I'll just show you what we're looking for and you guys collect. And that would be a good way of doing it. And then I have another group of people in another field down the road to compare the evidence who are the same skill level as you. If they're not the same skill level as you, then the results are going to be skewed because they've got more skill. So field walk, I took a group of people field walking from my Bridgen class once. And we went field walking, and Guess who had the most finds in his box? Me. And the realization is that I should have just let everyone collect stuff at their level because the data was skewed. But the one thing is to keep enthusiasm. Don't keep people field walking in the field for too long. You know, just say to people, I want you to field walk this box. When you've done it, put all your artifacts in a bag or put your flags down, and then go to the other box. And when you've done that box, all your artifacts collected, and you've also got to do the same speed, right? One thing I've noticed with people field walking is they're too enthusiastic. Bill walks too fast, right? So Bill has to walk the same pace as the slowest person in that group, right? Bill, naughty boy, right? But you've got to keep an eye. You've all got to be in a line. And when you do it in a line, the focus is the same. The collection levels are the same. The data is going to be the same. The understanding of the archaeology is going to be the same. The largest obstacles to understanding the similarities and differences in field data from different projects is a common failure of archaeologists to be explicit about their field and analysis procedures. We'll go on to that now. It is vital that the sort of issues discussed, what we're doing today, are carried out not to the letter, but with some level of understanding. I'm just going to get a glass of water a minute. Hang on, bear with me. And it's also a good idea when you're doing these online classes to have a break sometimes. So, so what we're going to do now, so we've got these images now of people field walking. And there you go. So what's going on in that field is you've got a bog standard field. And what's happened is that somebody has drawn out the field. And they've basically said that there are people going to be walking across that field in boxes. Okay, it's something known as the stint and traverse method. But to cut through those technical words, what you would do, you would have this individual. Let's get. You would start at this end of the field, walk that box, and put all the artifacts in a bag by the flag. And then he would walk that box, artifacts by the flag, walk that box, artifacts by the flag, 25-meter stints, and put the artifacts by that flag in a finds bag, right? But you would leave a space between the other person field walking, a 10-meter space. So what you're doing is getting a percentage sample across that field. A percentage of the archaeology across that field is being collated and collected. You're not walking across the whole field. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people walking across that field, and there's a collection strategy. Basically, they're either collecting a 10%, 20%, 30% amount of material across that field. Are they collecting everything? Well, that's something that we'll come on to. That's a very important thing. These are obviously what's happening here. You can see it. Let's zoom in on this one. This is a group of practical archaeologists. There you go. Probably a field in Lincolnshire. This is what this looks like. Those huge fields in Lincolnshire. The crop is growing. You know, is a crop growing in there? So they've got to be careful. So walk not across the furrows, but through the furrows so they don't damage the crop. Obviously, these people have got permission. So I would estimate that this person is looking 1 meter there, 1 meter there. He's got a 2-meter view in front of them, right? It looks like there's 5 meters between this person and that person. Again, 2 meters, 5 meters, 2-meter view, 5 meter, 2-meter view, and so on, right? And they might have estimated the field, and they're going to do this method, and then they're going to walk in this area, and so on and so on. So that's what they're doing, the field walking in that field. I mentioned earlier on about the Mediterranean. You know, I have worked in the Mediterranean. I worked in Spain and I worked in Cyprus. And both landscapes have something very similar in common. When you find an archaeological site in somewhere like Cyprus or Spain, right, the artifacts are vast. Yeah, you know, if you've got a Roman Hellenistic site, Visigoth site, or whatever you're working on, right, the artifacts are box loads in a small field. And the reason why that is that Roman civilization, Hellenistic civilization were on the continent for a lot longer. They were far more wealthier. So their sites are going to be full of more artifacts. But when you do get a Roman site in this country, you do get a few artifacts, but not as many as, say, a Roman site on the continent. And this will be very familiar to Bill. Prehistoric Gallery, Orkney Museum, Kirkwall, and field walking exhibition. Nice. One thing that archaeologists don't usually let people in on is what they've been finding in fields, right? They do this in Orkney because Orkney is very interactive with the community. You know, Orkney's tourist trade is based on its World Heritage sites. It gets funding for it. They look after it. You know, this is why lots of people go to Orkney, don't we, Bill? And field walking, even little random things in the field in Orkney are very beneficial. So let's make them public. That's what they're saying. When we're field walking in other parts of Britain, it's more or less to answer an academic question. Is there a Viking site there? Can we find a Viking site? We can't, nothing's helping us, aerial photography. Nothing's helping us on the maps. Nothing's helping us geophys. But if we find a bit of pottery, I've got a Viking site there, for example. That might be published in a journal, but the widespread public are not going to know about it. But in Orkney, they like people to know. So, my God, who's yawning? Anne?
Me.
Good. So what we need to look at is when you go field walking, if you're going to take a little bit of a list. So here we go. The people field walking at Taradale in Scotland, all they've been sanctioned to do is to pick up flint, right? So it's you can understand that all these fields marked here are the fields that have been walked, which is very important. So, for example, in field 112, there's no flints. In field is that field 2B? There's loads of flints. There's little bits of flint scattered in 114. What does this tell you? That's the whole point. So obviously, this mapping scale, you can get really good maps from the Ordnance Survey printed of an area now. So what you can do, you can go out there and say, right, I'm going to field walk in this area. So what we need to do, we need to get a finer scale map. You can get them from the Ordnance Survey. You can, for about 20, 30 quid, you can get an area of just Bridgend, you know, just the heart of Bridgend, and it'll just be a made map for that area of Bridgend. Whether it's 1 to 25,000 scale, whether it's 1 to 12,500 scale, or whether it's a smaller scale map, much smaller scale map, you're able to put things on a map. And the way they've been field walking at this site itself, they've put little flags in the ground, geophysed it, or they've taken quite rudimentary measurements, which is quite easy to do when the field is gridded out. And this gives you a good idea of the spread of the flints. Obviously, we're not going to know about the spread of the flints in these areas because they haven't been field walked. So what I would like to do now, I'm going to chuck you in at the deep end. I can tell you the mistakes I made, and we're going to make them right. So we're looking at this area here is called Norton. That's Ogmore Castle up there. This is Ogmore by Sea. This is St. Bride's. Most of you will probably be aware of this area. the year was 1996, 1997. I approached a local farmer and I said, can I field walk in your fields? And he said, yes, you can field walk in my fields. And actually, we field walked in this field. And in this field, we come across loads of medieval pottery and some really nice Neolithic flints. And all the Neolithic flints seem to be in this area, all the way in this area. And also, we went field walking in this field. If I'd have done this properly, if I'd have had aerial photography and I'd had some better equipment, I would have been the one identifying the first causewayed enclosure found in South Wales. Except when we went there the following year, there was a team from the National Museum of Wales walking, and they said only a few months earlier, aerial photography told them, indicated there was a causewayed enclosure in the field. Their artifacts told them that there's a causewayed enclosure in the field. And guess who had been field walking there the previous year and found exactly the same artifacts, but I was unsure what I was onto. So this is why things have to be done correctly, to try and really understand an archaeological landscape to get the most out of it. So what we need to do is, when we're field walking, you obviously need the date. You need the time of day that you're field walking, because this is really important. If you're field walking at 12 o'clock at night, the reason why you've only been finding flint is because your torch shone on the flint. And that's why you haven't found any pottery. If you're field walking at 5 o'clock, the light might be failing. If you field walk at 1 o'clock, you might find more artifacts. The point is, you need to have the same time when you're field walking every time across the different fields that you're field walking. Who's in your team? Well, Bill, Jessica, Margaret. I need to know who's in the team. And there's one thing that none of you can give up on that day of field walking, because if you give up, the data is going to be skewed. So you don't go field walking for 12 hours. Put it this way, 2 hours field walking is enough. Half an hour break, half an hour break, half an hour break, that's good. And then you get a bit worn out, a bit tired, and then you need an archaeologist to tell you what you found. Right, so the site, cross-reference the site with other bits, other things in the landscape. So here we go. What's in the landscape? Well, what we've got is a bit further over here. I haven't got the full map. You've got some Bronze Age barrows. This itself might actually be part of a dispersed medieval village, because this over here is Norton Hall Farm. So we know a little bit about the landscape. Has anything else been found here? There you go. Map coordinates, very important. So say, for example, the map itself, all maps have what's called the mapping reference. This one is HY. So you would say, right, HY 56, longitude, latitude 56, 2 other digits, and then you've got 27 and 2 other digits. It has to have an 8-figure reference. Otherwise, you might miss the field. So what are you specifically looking for? Do you have a plan? Well, it's always good to have a plan. Are you looking for the remains of the medieval village? Is there indications that the medieval village could be in this field? So that's what you're going to start thinking about. What is the field landscape? What is the field like? Well, I know for a fact that this field slopes in this direction because it heads into a valley. So this is the crown of it. This is where the road is. This is a crown of the ridge, but it slopes in this direction. Very, very important. Because if you start to find more artifacts here, that's because the field is sloped. That makes well, it doesn't make common sense, but if you write this down, that's fair enough. Geology, right? So here we go. What I'm going to do is, let's move away from this so you know very much what this map's like. So geology, what's the geology like? Well, is it lias limestone? Is it Carboniferous limestone? Is it sandstone? Is it basaltic rock? Basically, is it sedimentary? This is sedimentary rock. If it's metamorphic rock or igneous or something like that, then you're getting heavier rocks, and that helps you understand what's going on in the field. What's the geology like? The soil color. Well, I'm sure Menna's come across this. This is known as the Munsell soil chart. Now, say for example, there's different soil charts, different colors of the earth. So in Barry, for example, I will tell you that the soil is black because it's a very industrial landscape. Everyone used to put their cinders into the soil, so it's going to be a black soil. Okay, so if you go somewhere like Trellick, it's going to be slightly more acidic. It's going to be a reddy-like color. So all of this is relevant because it tells you of the acidity in the soil. How is the acidity? How is the alkaline conditions actually going to change the artifacts? What does that mean? Does it mean that we're not going to find any organic evidence? Does it mean we're going to actually find charcoal associated with fires and so on? All very important stuff. Moving on, it's the Munsell chart for anyone, M-U-N-S-E-L-L. You can print one off of the internet actually, but it's probably best to get the book. Because the way these Munsell charts are done, it's a bit like a Dulux color chart. They've basically painted in your Dulux, they painted these colors. And these ain't cheap charts to have, but the last time we actually had one of these years ago. So again, this is the soil color Munsell color chart. Again, there's different charts out there that you can use, but the best one is to take this chart in the field, and that is actually a hole. So you can put it over the soil and you can actually work out the soil color. And that's why it's in a ring binder, so you can put it back in. What is the soil composition? Now, I would love to spend a little bit more time on this, but if you're say working at Triada Bay in Anglesey, which is basically a beach, you would and you analysed it. So say there was a little bit of clay in it, right? The categorization of soil composition would be sand. But if it's sort of a little bit more clay, right, and you're starting to get up the silt chart, there's a little bit of silt in it. It might be loamy, sandy soil. This is a whole class in itself. So go up to the big one, clay. If the soil composition has got 80% clay, it's classified as being clay, right? If it's got 40% clay, and it's say got 60% sand, then it's a sandy clay. So this is how you read these charts. Actually, to be honest with you, the best way of doing it is if there's loads of clay in the field, just put it down, it's clay. If it's loads of sand, it's sort of sandy loam. The word loam is a mixture of clay and sand and silt, you know, but it's always good to be a bit more accurate than that. Again, we've explained this in detail. Topography, what's in the landscape? Are there hedges? Are there buildings? Is there a mound of dead animals in the field? Are there ditches? Are there rivers? That's topography. Land use. Is it near a town? Is it been preliminary used for ploughing over the years? Geological descriptions. Are there bits of rock on the surface? Are there unusual geological factors? So slightly different from the underlying geology, as we mentioned earlier on. And again, this is what could be described as the field transect plan, how you're walking the field, the transect plan. So you've got a little bit of a sketch and you say, right, we're going to do a 2 meter strip all the way down here, 5 meter gap, 2 meter strip. And that's your plan. And which way are you walking? Are you walking in a northerly direction? Are you walking into the wind? Walking into the wind is going to affect your ability to find things. Because if you've got the wind blowing in your eyes, you're going to think, oh shit, I can't really see much. So you need to write all that down, and everybody needs to be walking in the same direction. So what I would like to say is one thing I've done, I've really explained this thing about transects. The spacing between the walkers, the width, you're able to see 2 meters either side. And how long do you walk before you have a break? Because if you walk 25 meters solidly looking at the ground, really focusing, that can do your mind a little bit. So you need to take a little bit of a break. All of these factors, you know, how you divide the school, the field is really, really important. So what I'm going to do here, and I'm slightly wary of time, and I can't go over tonight because, yes, I've got tomorrow to prepare for. So this. Now, we're gonna think about actually field walking now at this minute. We're gonna think about going back to this field, right? Let's just go back to this field, right? What are we looking for? We're looking for medieval remains, right? That's what we're looking for. We're looking to work out you know, if there's a concentration of medieval pottery here, and it's unabraded, and it's freshly from the ground after it's been ploughed, and there's loads of it, that might indicate a building. Be wary that we've actually got a slope here as well. Yeah, but if we don't find many bits of pottery here, and we don't find any at the bottom of the slope, it's unlikely that there's anything of the medieval village in this area, but we're finding lots in this area, and that might indicate the medieval village. So what artifacts do we actually need? Let's just go through this list. Now, everyone who goes field walking is very tempted by the bone, and they're very tempted by teeth. A tooth shines at you, and you always want to pick it up. And also a jawbone. Oh my God, you've got a skull there, a big chunk of skull. Really want to pick her up. But that's not going to help you to identify a medieval village. It's not going to help you one bit. And why? These bones could date from any period. They could date from last year. They could date from the Roman period. They could date from the medieval. They could date from the Iron Age, right? These could be the remains of a Viking warrior, or they could be the remains of a Roman, or they could be the remains of a cat, a dog, a cow, a sheep. They don't tell you anything. They're not helping you identify the medieval period. And do you know what? Usually I find out you've got bags full of bones, even though I've said to people not to pick up bones. But then again, if you've got a group of people that haven't really done field walking, then they've got no choice but collect all the bones. I actually found a complete sheep in one bag once, and then told by the farmer that that's where a sheep rotted in the field. But I had to take the full carcass home. Is this going to be any use? Well, if you're John and you want to find little skulls of little rodents, shrews, and all the rest of these things, that would be useful. But unfortunately, we are archaeologists. We are looking for evidence of a medieval village. So this is going to be no good to us either. Clay pipes, wow. We all love clay pipes. Menna absolutely loves clay pipes. She's got a big collection of clay pipes. Clay pipes, are they going to be any useful for finding a medieval village? The answer is no. In many ways, clay pipes are a really obsolete piece of archaeological evidence in a field, because we know that clay pipes were being used from the late 1500s all the way through 16, 17, 18, even into about 1940. People are still smoking. Clay pipes are still around today, right? You can date a clay pipe from the size of the bowl. The smaller the bowl, without a little heel like this, the older they are. And usually when you get a long bloody stem, it's probably from about the 1700s, because people used to put them in their long tricorn hats. And the longer the stem, it means you've got a bigger drawer on the ganja. No, the baccy, right? I forget about the ganja bit there. A bigger draw on the tobacco, because tobacco was really expensive. Some of the lengths of clay pipe can be 2 foot in length. I kid you not. So as you're taking a deep draw, you need less tobacco. And that indicates that the tobacco was really expensive. So you might have a little bowl to it. Although clay pipes are absolutely fascinating, they're of no use in most understandings of field walking. They might be good collectible items, but you know, there you go. So you could basically say that one over there dates probably from about the 1600s, 1650. As you start to get these little heels on them, they start to get into the 1700s, that type of thing. But we're not doing a clay pipe lecture today. Clay pipes are absolutely amazing bits of evidence on an archaeological excavation. They tell you that the site that you're looking at was being used in the 1500s because they got really good datable dates to them, right? We know that the site's being used in the 1890s because there's decoration on them. But this is on an archaeological excavated site, not in field walking. Not in field walking. So here we go. But these designs, again, these are all from the late Victorian period. Again, this indicates that there was a boy in a field one day rolling around with his maid and he dropped his clay pipe. But other than that, that's all that tells you. You can come across bag loads of these things. The problem is, Margaret's problem with washing these is not only have you got to wash the clay pipe, you've got to get a little pin into the center of them to chuck the soil out, right? And whilst she's doing that, she could actually be washing medieval pottery. That's what I want Margaret to do. I don't want you to collect any of this, right? But then again, if I hadn't told people to collect everything in that field at Colchester that day, that Roman clay pipe leg, clay leg, if I'd said, don't pick up any clay pipes, right, she would have thought that there was a clay pipe and left it there, right? So I would have missed that evidence. Again, more of these clay pipes. Glass. Do we collect glass? Ooh. Do we collect glass? The answer usually is no. Now, glass usually survives in a field because it's more recent. Really old glass is unlikely to survive. Any complete tossing around in the soil with the date of the glass would render it basically obsolete. So if glass survives, basically, right, if you can find a bit of glass in a field and see light through it, right, and this is perfectly transparent, right, it's more likely to be very, very modern. That's not a complete rule. If you get a bit of glass and the surface is flecking off, it's old, right? But glass, really old glass, is very rare in a field walking context. So, and there's also another reason why you don't collect glass. It's health and safety. You only collect glass if you're wearing gloves. So you leave the glass there. And also, poor old Margaret has got to wash this stuff and she hasn't had a tetanus injection. So we leave glass in the field. It's dangerous stuff and it also rips the bags. So that's, by the way, that's not going to help us find a medieval site either. Now, finding this is going to help us find a medieval site because this is medieval pottery. But there's a problem. We've now got a problem. What's the difference between that pot there, which is a medieval pot, and that pot there, which is Roman pot? The answer is it's going to be very difficult for an active field walker to work out the difference between that medieval pot and the Roman pot. So it might be said, collect pottery in the field, just collect pottery, right? But the problem is with that, you're collecting pottery of all periods, but nevertheless, it's going to be very difficult to identify the difference between some types of Roman pottery and some medieval types of pottery. Roman pottery is usually finely made, right? But if you're having to take a split decision in a field, It's a very difficult decision to make, and you've got to make that decision. Put it in your bag anyway. Medieval jug, you're not going to find complete medieval jugs in the field because these would have long since damaged. A bit of medieval jug handle, beautiful, isn't it? So this is the type of stuff you're looking for. Now, Bill, I've asked you, Bill, I'm asking you a question now, right? I've asked you to find medieval pottery and to ignore all Roman Samian ware, even the finest Roman Samian ware in the field. What are you going to do, Bill?
Look at the lower left-hand screen.
And just ignore that the Samian ware's there. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's not Samian lower left. All the Samian ware is on the upper right.
Oh no, the
Middle
point.
right.
No, Bill, that's not the point I was making. Sorry, I should have been more clearly. Sorry, you were right in what you said. Basically, I've said to you to go field walking, Bill. I only want you to collect medieval pottery, and I want you to leave the Roman Samian ware in the field. What are you going to do?
Obey the instruction. Just pick up the lower left items.
That is the right answer. The right answer. However, if you come across a really finely decorated piece of Roman Samian ware, stick a flag in the ground and we can mark it on the book, because that might be useful for other people field walking in future generations looking for Roman evidence. But Bill gave the right answer. It's a very hard call to make. Leave some beautiful Roman Samian ware in the field. And you're not going to collect this stuff. This is slipware. Mind you, if you were, if I'd said collect all types of pottery, slipware is quite easy to identify. And this isn't going to be medieval. So we could have a little crash course and said, right, there's lots of slipware in the field. Pick it up, identify its slipware from the 1800s and put that back down on the floor. That's what I'd be asking you to do. And also, Bishop Bellarmine, imported from Germany, late 1600s, late 1500s, early 1600s. These are the stonewares imported from Germany. They're not going to be medieval. You do get some very late medieval stonewares, but let's leave that in the field, right? Unfortunately, I love, you know, these have little portraits on them and beards. It's great stuff. Very great stuff. So moving on again. Now, when you're field walking and you see anything like this, it's very likely that none of this is going to be medieval. But the stuff that I'm very much interested in, for me personally, would be the Delftware. This is English tinware here, and you've got a bit of probably a bit of really late medieval tile, or maybe, as this describes it, Tudor pottery. But if you can avoid this, because we are at the end of the day looking for medieval pottery. And Bill, are you going to collect your ring pulls?
Wonderful collection, yeah.
Now, the one ring pulls are wonderful bits of evidence on an archaeological site. Ring pulls can be dated from the 60s all the way to about when they were banned in about, I think it was 1991. And it's unfortunately we don't have these types of evidence in the past, because if there were ring pulls in the medieval period and they stopped making them, then you'd be able to identify a medieval site quite easily. And you wouldn't have the problem identifying several different types of pottery. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to mention that obviously when you're going field walking, you don't walk every single inch of the field, because one, you need to allow material to be left behind for other people to collect it. And sneezing.
Bless you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I got the blooming door open waiting for Michelle to come in, and I'm getting really cold. But anyway, so what you need to do is, you've got a really big field. You're gonna field walk 25% of it. So you leave 75% of the field unwalked, and you walk 25% of it. So the method that you're seeing behind me is probably a good way of doing it. Strips in the field with space between them, all roped out. That's a really good way of doing it. I made the classic mistake in Cyprus of working on a site with people that had never done field walking before. And I said to the people field walking, collect everything in the field, right? And it was a Roman Hellenistic site. And we ended up with a truckload of artifacts. And it took us 2 weeks to wash everything. In doing so, people didn't go out back field walking in the field, and we really didn't do the work that we were meant to be doing there. So you can imagine Margaret washing, I think we had the equivalent of 6 crisp boxes full of artifacts. You can imagine we counted 10,000 artifacts, every single one meticulously washed. I should have basically said, let's sample the field. And I was so inexperienced back in 1993. I didn't understand the logic. Yes, I did direct work in Cyprus when I was 18. So obviously I didn't understand the logic. I should have taken a sample and things would have been so much better. And you know, we had really nice, we had nice handles with a nice curl to them. And yeah, I should have just said collect the handles, and the results would have been far better. And that would have given it, and the word here is diagnostic. Okay, so diagnostic is handles, bases, and rims. Well, actually, you know, the best way of doing this is there's loads of pottery in the field, right? We're taking a 25% sample, and we're only collecting rims and bases of everything. And by doing that, you get a sample of the ages, and you get concentrations of fines, but you're not collecting the sides of the pottery. You're collecting the heavy bases, which are identifiable, and the rims, which are identifiable, and the handles, and that's all I want you to collect. So that's a really nice way of collecting artifacts in the field. You're not going to find as many artifacts, but Margaret don't want to spend the next 3 weeks washing pottery. So she might do something for her to do on a Wednesday. So basically, one thing you've got to say, I want you to collect just flint in the field. Well, these artifacts are not just flint. That's flint, and that's chert. But they were all used in the Neolithic period. So should I not say collect all artifacts that look like flint? Really interesting dichotomy. And that can only be answered by a group of people sitting around working out the resources. I said to people, collect work flint. I don't want you to collect this stuff. This is just flint nodules or chert nodules in the field that ain't going anywhere. It may have been brought into the field, but it may have been dropped in the field by the last glaciation. That's what you're going to work out when you do this, understanding the landscape feel, looking at the geology and what's going on. You'll be able to understand it, that a glacier dropped deposits on the field. So that's why you've got loads of nodules. So you leave them there. Some worked flint again. What you might do, say for example, I said, right, Manna, Jessica, Bill, we've got a huge field. We've got to do a 10% sample, and we're only picking up flint. So we're doing this sample in the field, and I say, right, every time you find a bit of work flint like this, put a flag down in there. Don't pick it up. Flag down in there, bag it, leave it there, right? Then we correlate all the flint across the field, and we get a map of where the individual finds are in the field, not just in that 25-meter strip that you're walking, but across the whole field. We're able to correlate all the artifacts. You might find a collection of artifacts that might indicate that they've been flint napping in the field. So all this is really interesting data. So one last thing I would like to do, oh, actually, we'll go 5 minutes over, then we'll call it a day. Okay, so just a quick thing, a quick little exercise, a short exercise, and I need to tell you about the maps, and then we'll call it a day. So we'll do the map, and I'll mention York. Those stay behind, and we'll have a quick chat about this. So we're looking at a site in the Vale of Glamorgan called Llantrythid, near Bombleston, above Rhys, between Bridgend and Cardiff, Llantrythid Place. Now, this map is a 1 to 50,000 scale map. It doesn't show as much detail as the 1 to 25,000 scale. it's not as the great detail that I need. So what we've got, it doesn't actually show, basically the reason why this isn't what I want, because it doesn't actually show the details of the houses properly. It doesn't actually show that that's a bigger barn and that's actually 2 houses and there's a division. That's what we found on the 1 to 25,000, but not on the 1 to 50,000. But this is good enough that we're actually going to go field walking here. I didn't realize how big this field was when I field walked it in 1998. It was a massive field. And I had a group of like 5 people and we decided to walk the entire field. Big mistake. And in lots of ways, learning from mistakes is the best way forward in archaeology. So what you've got, to give you an idea of the landscape. So if we go back to the map again, let's see where we are. So we're going to field walk in this field, which is this field here. It doesn't look that big, but this is the mansion house of LANGFORD. It's a fairly big field. It'd been ploughed, freshly ploughed that day. And the remit was to collect everything, to tragic results. I didn't know that 1 or 2 of my field walkers, when picking everything up, were actually finding very delicate Tudor glass. And I don't know why we were finding it. It shouldn't have been found. But when they were putting the Tudor glass in the bag, then they were putting stones on top of the Tudor glass. And by the end of the field walking, all the glass had been smashed to smithereens. So if I'd have had a strategy to just collect glass, if I had learned anything more about the field, I could have said, right, what we'll do is as you collect the glass, you put it in a little nice padded bag, right? From some of the artifacts, I realized that we had been very lucky that day, but very unlucky in the way we had done the field walking. But again, that was 24 years ago, and this is 24 years more wisdom later. And again, looking, you can clearly see the relationship of this manor house at LANGFORD with this field. Okay, there is a relationship with the field. So you might be able to assume that you might find things like Tudor glass and Stuart glass. But then again, maybe not. But if that glass had been freshly ploughed and it was a fresh glass object and it had been smashed up, the artifacts would have been very valuable. And they could have been if we'd worked on them properly. We didn't find any buttons like this. So you might find when you're looking at evidence for later periods, lots of buttons. Buttons don't come in until the late Tudor Stuart period. Amazing enough, but people really didn't have many buttons before this period. So again, finding buttons date the period that you're actually looking at. And this might be the typical type of stuff that you're looking for, maybe in relation to a much later site that you're getting coins. So we're looking at maybe a site from the 1800s all the way to 1900. So this is what these artifacts would indicate. Some Georgian coins beginning of the 1800s and probably pottery itself from the Victorian period and so on. Whoever was field walking was told to pick up everything. And this is the type of glass that we were finding. And I went field walking there again, never found anything like this at all again. So the information that could have been learnt has been completely lost, which is the tragedy of not getting things right. What we're going to do, we're going to do a quick exercise. So now somebody said, right, that the Iron Age site at the bulwarks has been ploughed. Is field walking, even with the permission of the landowner at the bulwarks, a scheduled ancient monument, the right thing to do? What is the answer, Bill?
Sorry, repeat that, Carl. Beg your pardon.
We have been given permission. They've decided to plough the scheduled ancient monument at the bulwarks, and the farmer's given us permission to collect artifacts from the field. Are we allowed to do that or not?
No, you've got no permits to do it
You need to
from
get
CADU.
you need to get scheduled ancient monument permission from CADU. Bill is very right. Even if you've got permission to field walk in a field, it doesn't mean to say that you've got the right permission, because the farmer might not be aware that it's a scheduled ancient monument. But the archaeologist is to be aware that it's a scheduled ancient monument. And if you haven't got the right permission, you can be prosecuted. But if the farmer hasn't been told it's a scheduled ancient monument, he will get away with prosecution if he plows the field and he's not allowed to. But the archaeologist is meant to know these things. So what we're going to do, we're going to mention these maps now. By next week, what I would like you all to do is to get a 1 to 25,000 scale map. Now this is a 1 to 50,000 scale map, and there's a problem with this. There are no field boundaries. Where are the field boundaries? Oh my God, you can't really see houses. This is no good to me. But, however, if the only map that you guys have got is a 1 to 50,000 scale map, you can actually use it, because what I would like you to do is next week, I would like you to find all the monuments on the map that are marked. I want you to do, I want you to find all the sites on the map that are marked enclosures. And then you put a little tally alongside it. All the sites that are marked tumulus, tally alongside it. All the sites marked long barrow, tally alongside it. All the sites, again, earthworks, tally alongside it. And the sites that we're actually looking for, the archaeological sites indicated, if you're going to be doing a 1 to 50,000 scale map, are the ones in italics. And the same rule occurs for a 1 to 25,000 scale map, but you're going to find more sites on a 1 to 25,000 scale map than you are on a 1 to 50,000 scale map. And I do believe that our wonderful Pam has got a problem with maps. Get a map and see if you can use the same technique, finding sites, and tell us about it. Let's just go with the flow. So you can see the difference in maps. So this is a 1 to 50,000 scale map, 1 to 25,000 scale map. There's more detail. And actually, one thing, don't go for a map of a mountain, because it's going to have nothing but lines on it and hardly anything to see.
How big an area do you want us to do?
Well, basically, usually these explorer maps are this size.
Yeah.
Okay, they're this size. Now, if you haven't got time, you do half of the map, but you need to tell us you're doing half the map and what half the map you're doing.
All right.
And the way you do it is quite simple, right? What we're going to do, we're going to go off this now, and I will just demonstrate this to you guys. And Bill doesn't like me calling you guys. And there's the one thing that I haven't done a minute. I just need to do this for the bravado. And don't forget, those coming on the trip tomorrow, Jessica and Bill need to stay behind and have a quick chat with me. So I'm going to look at this, show you this, right? So what we need to do, the best thing to do is start in the corner of the map, left-hand corner, and look at the first box. And there's nothing in that box. There's C in that one. There's C in that one. There's nothing in that one. But on this one, there's a chambered cairn. So have I got chambered cairns written down there? Yeah, we go. There's another chambered cairn. And then go at the top. Look at every single box. Go down. Nothing that. And just keep doing that. And if you actually take your time, don't rush it. Take your time. Spend half an hour over it. It's a good exercise. You can, if you've got a map of your local area, you learn so much, right? So take your time and do it right. Don't rush. That's your homework. So what I'm going to ask...
Mark the map?
No. Basically, no, you don't. Tumulus. Tally. Cairn. Tally. Another cairn. There you go. Earthwork there. Oh, another earthwork. That's how you want you to do it. Yep. Is that clear? Good. This is one of the easiest exercise I set, right? But it's one of the most useful. So what I would like to hear is I would like you to all come on now. And again, the same rule as last week. Try and keep your, everyone's allowed to 2 questions. Starting with Bill, go for it.
Well, it's interesting to hear that you found flint, Carl, in the field walk near Ogmore. Obviously, that indicates that trade and travel were quite vibrant during the Neolithic. Burrowing animals, obviously like moles and rabbits, can really give you a bonus, can't they, by bringing things up. If you find a coin in a field, ancient coin, medieval, even Roman,
Flag.
And if you find a cache in the same field, who is the legal owner and what's the procedure for reporting that?
Right, basically a cache of coins is covered by the Treasure Trove Act now, and being the number of coins. And the best thing to do is that needs to be marked, and then archaeologists need to be brought in to excavate that. If you've got the problem is with me doing an excavation in a field where you're all field walking, the exercise is field walking. If that is the result that you found a coin hoard, that is part 2. And then the focus is on that coin hoard. That's the difference. The legal owner of that field, you will have had an agreement with the farmer anyway, but the legal owner of that hoard is to be determined by the courts. And obviously that comes under the Treasure Trove Act. So that's where that comes into it. Being an archaeologist, which I hate, if I found a coin hoard, I wouldn't be able to get any financial benefit from it. If you find a coin hoard, Bill, you would.
Mm-hmm.
So Margaret, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to say to Margaret, you found it, didn't you, Margaret? Yeah? You found it. And we'll go halves on it. Well, the landowner gets half and we have the other half. So there you go. So we have a quarter each. So Margaret, anything you would like to say? We
She's
can't hear you.
muted.
You're muted. Ask to unmute.
Sorry, technology.
Go for it.
Going back to the map, you want us to go minutely down each little bit,
Yeah.
and when we see something we think, oh, a tumulus or whatever, I write it down. You're not telling me, you've not given me a list of things that I'm looking for. You want me to find them on the map, yeah?
That's right. Or anything it has to be in italics. You only write the things that are in italics.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Only the italic stuff. It's a bit like field walking. I'm only asking you to write down the italic stuff. Right. That's that. And Jess, you go for it now.
No, just thought it was good. Something I obviously haven't looked into before. And it was nice to know.
Now you have. Thank you, Ellen.
Oh, large houses always had a bottle dump. So any of their bottles that they had things in, if they got cracked or broken, they'd put them in a dump far further away from the house and where they weren't cattle or anything, so they didn't get injured.
That's right. Yeah. And obviously that can be found in a field, but obviously, you know, the plough is going to be really destructive of any glass. So glass is a very awkward one there. Yeah, that's very good. Pam.
I was told not to pick up stuff off the field, and I thought, oh, that's a bit strange. It's lying on the top of the field. I could pick it up, but no, the person I was with is right. You don't pick up stuff off the top of the field.
Exactly. Only if it's in an organised, field walking expedition. Yeah.
So I have to put it back.
No, that's fine.
Unless it's your garden.
I've had people on walks with me, and it's usually leave everything there, don't touch it. Anyway, Manna, anything you'd like to say?
So, like, do you know you told to only look for specific things?
So like, say now you were to come across like a really nice find, but not from the period and stuff you're looking for, does it not get recorded at all?
Yes, it does. You put a flag there and we'll record it. Yes, because
Okay.
that could be used. You know, say for example, it's a big chunk of Roman Samian bowl, right? That's an important find. So you would flag that, you would record it and take it back with you, and that could be useful for somebody then recording the Roman stuff. So their strategy then is, you've just been in there to get the medieval stuff. Then their strategy is to ignore the medieval stuff and they just look for the Roman stuff. So that's the way of doing it. Your evidence is helping them. So
Okay.
So, and also, you know, the archaeologist at the end of the day might say, right, there was loads of Roman pottery in the field. That's in the report, but we didn't collect any of it. And then another person comes in and they collect that. Good point. And Anne, anything quickly before we go?
No, that was fine, thanks. I did do a bit of field walking once. So that was, I remember what you said about the frost. Frosty mornings are the best. A little bit later, you know. Yeah, it's interesting.
You weren't with me at Norton, were you, with your daughter?
I can't remember. No, I didn't go to the dig. No,
not the dig, the field walking. Yeah.
Well, I went field walking somewhere with someone.
It was obviously me, exactly.
It was you. Well, I certainly learned about it. I know I learned.
Yeah, I know you learned about it. Yeah, exactly.
Did you end up in the bushes?
Yes, you did. Anyway, on that note, we're all ready for next week. This has been a really good session again. This is great. So we'll do the mapping thing next week, and that we'll all have a little bit to put into next week. But obviously, I'll put my own side into the mapping next week. So obviously, Ellen and Pam and Anne and I will Margaret. I'll see you all next week, and Menna, I'll see you next week. No excavation this Sunday because we're in Cornwall naturally, and that's it. So what I'm going to do, Bill and Jess stay on a little bit, and I'm going to say good night to Margaret, Pam, Ellen, Anne, and Menna. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Just a minute. You did say anyone going to York to stay. Did you really mean that?
Say that.
You said anyone going to York to stay. Did you really mean that?
I thought I said Cornwall, didn't I?
No.
You said York.
Oh, bugger me. I meant Cornwall. It's the same difference. No,
thank goodness for that.
Don't worry, Pam. I will see you soon.
Okay. Bye for now. Have a good time.
Bye for now. Have a good time.
Have a good time.
We will. And I'll see you soon, Anne.
Yeah, bye.
Not too good.
Bye. Bye.
Take care, you two. Bye. Bye-bye. 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 Right. Okay then. Right. So I'm gonna stop the recording. Right.